today, and I want to thank all the residents that have taken the time out of their busy schedules to join us to have this important conversation on community safety. But before we begin, I would love to answer this question, but I also wanted to give all of our panelists here an opportunity to introduce themselves, say a couple of words. We'll have a video from Premier Doug Ford, who couldn't be here with us today, but made a video message to thank all of you for attending and emphasizing how important this issue is, not only for Bramptonians, but people across this province. So I'll start from my right, Mr. Williams. Sorry.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Charmaine Williams, MVP for Brampton Centre. I also serve as Ontario's Associate Minister of Women's Social and Economic Opportunities, and I'm so happy to be here tonight. Community safety is one of the most important topics that we can talk about. We don't have a community if we don't feel safe, and so it's important that we make sure the information and the things that we're doing is being received, but also to get feedback from all of you to know what we can do to make our community a bit safer. And so I'm happy to be here, and I want to say thank you for having me here.
Hi everyone, I'm the CMB and the MVP for Brampton and Associate Solicitor General for all of them together more. Thank you for having me. I've been doing these across the province, and this is by far the largest turnout. So kudos to all of you. Thank you for attending. And thank you, Grewal, for organizing such an important event. I do want to say one thing about the two people that I left. So, Mr. William, I think we fail. I'll just call them shopping now. And to be fair, all representatives of Brampton, you guys are lucky to have them because every opportunity, every moment, and then the legislature, if you ever to speak, every committee can always find, not just for people in Ontario, but people in Brampton. And you can see a lot of investments that's come to Brampton in the last 7 or 8 years. Never in the history of Brampton to see that investment. And I'm envious of that, but it's because of Hardeep and Shari and others who really fight for this community. So thank you for everything they do. This is right in front of me. I'm relatively new to the job, but I'm learning from them. Look forward to answering questions. Thank you for having me.
I think we're doing introductions before we answer this question, but it's a privilege to be with you all, and I am the Chief of Police, Field Regional Police, and we're very thankful to be here with you. The opportunities to see you in person, for you to engage with us, are obviously very limited from time to time, depending on community events, or media, or news, but to be in person is actually a privilege. The one thing I'd like you to know is on behalf of my Deputy Chief here too, is we're proud to be your police service. Our goal is to be unlike any other police service in this country. And the reason is we want to do our best to respond to the challenges that are very unique to Brampton, to Peel Region. And I can tell you, because I know my other colleagues across Ontario and Canada, it is unlike anywhere else. The things that make us a vibrant community that we want to celebrate and honor, also sometimes bring some challenges and vulnerabilities, which we are in a unified way trying to work together. So on behalf of our 3,500 members of Peel Police, we're privileged to be here with you. We hope you find it informative. To get a time where we can speak to you and you get an understanding right from us about some of these issues that we're all talking about is often very rare. So thank you again. I'll pass it to Deputy Mayor. But you can talk to you about his responsibilities. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. Chief Nicholovich. I am in charge of investigative and emergency services, and I believe we are going to talk about a lot of the issues that are important to you tonight that fall not only under my pillar, but at the agency's pillar as well. And I have to tell you, I am really excited to have this conversation. Move forward. Everybody here is a reflection of the community's interest and involvement in making our community safer. And I also want to share what we're doing on behalf of our police service in order to make sure that we can deliver that. The Chief mentioned it, and I'm going to double down on it. We are your police service. And I really believe you're doing everything possible we can, despite a lot of barriers and issues in order to provide that. And I'm looking forward to sharing that with you.
Thank you. Deputy Mark Andrews, I'm deputy in charge of frontline policing. That is all the uniform divisions in Mississauga and in Brampton, as well as the airport. And I'm also in charge of our road safety team. Traffic safety, road safety, we one of the priorities for our community. I'm keenly aware of a lot of the issues that are impacting our community. I grew up in Mississauga and currently live in Brampton. I hear the issues, not only in these settings, but when I'm at the grocery store or out with my grandkids. So getting the feedback directly from members of the community is incredibly important so that we can be responsive to the things that are the issues that are most important to our community. They can't be driven by what we believe, it's got to be driven by what we know and what is being told to us. So this is a fantastic opportunity, and I hope to be able to answer some of your questions, and those that I can answer, we can answer, during the time allotted. We'll make time and connect with you off the stage or through electronic platforms or through phone calls and answer those questions. I think we need to do some more of these sessions because getting feedback from our community is the key to us being a really responsive police service for everyone.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Grewal, Regional Councillor, Ward 9 and 10, City of Brampton. I have the privilege of serving this community for the last 3 years, and one thing consistently that I hear from the time of my campaign till today is that community safety is the #1 issue that's top of mind of every single one of my residents. And historically, the last 2 years, we passed the largest police budgets in Region Appeals history. And that is a testament to the work that Chief Mitch and his team and maybe all the officers that joined us here today, to all the incredible work that they have done. I got to be part of the graduating ceremony of 80 new officers already this year. We're targeted for 300 officers by the 300 new officers by the end of this year. So with that, thank you to my counterpart at the provincial government, but you guys will organizing this town hall. Thank you all our residents for showing up, and we're happy to be a part. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Rob Fowler. I'm the council for Ward 7A, which is actually this area that we're in. But, I think the biggest thing that I see or I hear is building that community and making sure our communities are strong and safer. And I really want to give it up to both Charmaine and Hardeep for the work that they put in. I was at a town hall with Charmaine last week, and I'll tell you, it was a tough town hall. She opened the floor and get that up quick. So good on them for doing that, and good on them for including the city as well, because this is how we grow together. This is how we build back our community, is by having all levels of government with us as well as services. So that way we can find solutions and find common ground with everybody in our community. Thank you very much for coming here. Thank you, Hardeep.
Thank you. My name is Hardeep Singh. I'm the Deputy Mayor and the City Councilor for Wards 9 and 10. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. It's probably no more of an important issue than community safety. So thank you to Hardeep and the whole team and the police for coming out and engaging in this two-way communication. I think that's fundamental to finding solutions. So thank you, and we look forward to being part of this panel. Thank you so much.
Just wanted to say thank you very much, again, everyone for attending. Thank you, everybody that's joined us here on this panel, my colleagues from Queen's Park. A special thank you to Stephen Mead, our Associate Solicitor General, on all of that and Baylor Forum. These are conducting these meetings across the province, and that's where I got the idea to have a town hall on all of that and Baylor Forum. Thank you very much for the great work that you've been doing for our province and joining us here today, as well as Chief Mitch, his team, deputies, Deputy Mayor, Regional Councilor, everybody that's here. I'm thankful that we're able to get together and have a conversation on our community safety. As we go around and as many individuals across Brampton East, usually we get a lot of questions on healthcare, which is very, very important. It's always on the top of our list as a government to make sure we're delivering on that. But what I noticed for the first time ever is that we're getting more questions on community safety than healthcare. And that sends an alarming signal that there's a huge problem across this province, and we need to work hard to make sure we tackle that. We put organized crimes, we put them in jail ready to go on, not bail, and we're all here ready to work to achieve those goals and targets. Throughout this panel, we're going to be talking about percentages of crime that's come down over the peak of all of this, and what we're doing towards the future to combat and make sure that we continue to have those safe and thriving communities that we're all used to. Before I pass it back to Sean to repeat that question on automated speed cameras, I also want to play a message from Fingercut Ford, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today. He would love to be here today, but he's recorded a video message for all of us.
Hi everyone, I want to thank Chief Nash, Minister Hardeep, MVP Grewal, and the entire Brampton team for all their dedication. Ontario continues to face serious challenges when it comes to auto theft, breaking, and repeat violent offenders cycling through the system. That's why our government has called on the federal government to restore mandatory minimum sentences for serious, violent, and repeat offenders. When someone breaks in, steals a car, or carries a gun, there must be real consequences. The police need the court support to do their job. Our government will continue fighting for tougher laws, more resources for law enforcement, and safer neighborhoods across Ontario. Together, we'll build a safer, stronger Ontario. God bless.
So Sean, we'll put it back to you. Just repeat that question one more time so everybody knows what the question is, and we'll get right into our automated speed enforcement.
Of course. Again, I want to thank the panel and all of our panelists who just made introductions. We have great new leaders here, and it's amazing how many residents came out today. It shows how important community safety is to all of us here in the city of Brampton. So the first question is about automated speed cameras. We're going to see it again. Ontario has recently announced that municipal automated speed enforcement cameras will be removed, with the government emphasizing that they have become more of a revenue tool than a road safety measure. At the same time, families in Brampton remain concerned about speeding and dangerous driving on local roads near schools, parks, and residential neighborhoods. How will the government ensure that the removal of speed cameras does not compromise safety in our community? And what new investments for traffic calming measures are being introduced in to protect children and families on our streets? So Hardeep, this one's directed for you first.
Thank you very much, Sean, for the question. And I want to thank the community for that question. We've been receiving a lot of emails on automated speed cameras from both sides of the spectrum, whether it comes to the support of our local, whether people's concerns on how does that impact the safety in my neighborhood. The reason the question is directed to me is I'm parliamentary assistant to our great Minister of Transportation. We're also fortunately going to be here today, one of our great Brampton MPs, Bobby Sagaria. With the leadership of Fingercut Ford, this decision was not made lightly when it came to removing automated speed cameras, not only in Brampton, but across the province. The reason our government looked into this is particularly we've seen year over year, the number of tickets that are being issued on speed cameras are increasing. And municipalities across the province have seen this also as a revenue generating tool for the municipality itself, generating millions of revenue. And I can give an example from the city of Toronto, where one particular speed camera output almost 75,000 tickets, generating over $7 million for the city in that particular location. So it's about keeping their community safe, but also making sure that we're not adding new taxes, we're not gouging the residents across this province in terms of prices. Because if we take a look into this and put it into perspective, if you're driving down a road that's, let's say it's 70 kilometers, and you're going at 78, 79, even up to 80, the likelihood of an officer or a traffic officer pulling you over and giving you a ticket for being 5-7 kilometers over that speed limit is highly, highly unlikely unless you're involved in some type of dangerous driving in that particular moment. So we want to make sure that residents have the opportunity to correct their speed and there be investments made into speed calming measures. And what do we mean when it comes to speed calming measures? We're talking about proper signage, we're talking about flashing lights, your speed, the digital signs that come across. And I know everybody's thinking that we've seen these signs before in our communities, but those signs aren't at the magnitude of what they should be at. The signs that Premier Force unveiled last week at our announcement, these are 6.5 feet by 4 feet wide, massive signs that are going to be placed on these residential streets, as well as those school zones where people know when to slow down. These digital billboards are going to be approximately like 5.5 feet wide, 3.5 feet tall, with giant words saying this is what you're speeding in at, and this is what's going on, so the community can slow down through education, not through fines and tickets. And the way we look at this is that if these speed cameras are actually lowering the amount of people that are passing by at higher speeds, the number of tickets and the volume of those tickets would increase. What we've been seeing is that every camera where these speed cameras are installed, more and more tickets are being placed. And what's resulting out of that is that people that live in those neighborhoods, they don't know that there's a speed camera navigation and they'll slow down. But the amount of through traffic that comes in, that's not slowing them down. They're still receiving tickets, they're still coming through. And just because they don't live in the area, they don't know where those particular cameras are placed. So that's becoming more of a revenue generating tool for the ticketing. We want to see that money invested into municipalities where we look at measures on actually reducing the number of people that are speeding on these roads. I believe so far, in the last year, we've given about $3.4 million to the region of Field to install more traffic calming measures, but that's not where things are going to stop. That's just the beginning of this. In November, when we bring legislation to remove automated speed cameras, we're going to make sure that we provide additional funding to municipalities across this province, so they have more traffic calming measures coming. That's not something that's going to be done later this year. It's something that's going to happen now. Later in November, we're planning to roll out across this province and introduce these traffic calming measures to make sure people abide by the rules, slow down, and we're also going to make sure that we have enough resources in our traffic safety division for PRP to see that we have more officers on the road to ensure that we're slowing people down and making sure that they're following these rules. We want to have safe cities, safe spaces, and have people respect the rules of the road. However, what we've seen is this is just a tax grab. There's a lot of money being put into this. Most of that money is not making its way back down to those traffic calming measures. But I also want to be perfectly clear on the breakdown of the funds that come out of all these speed cameras that have been going on for the last little while. On an average ticket, if you're going 70 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 11 kilometers over the speed limit, your average ticket is going to come in around $110, $120 or so have you. Out of that, we have the provincial surcharge for accessing the Enfield Lake database, which is about $8.25, which gets charged on each ticket to access that data. And then on top of that, we have a victim surcharge, which gets donated to people that are current software, which is approximately $20. And then we have the victim portion, which is given off to the city to use at their discretion if they're using that towards funding the cameras or whatsoever. And what we've been noticing is all these tickets that are rolling in, and we're also thinking about those people that are being 5 kilometers, 7 kilometers, 9 kilometers over their elderly at work. Well, that entire days of work, that paycheck, is now going towards that speed camera. However, if we have traffic on the measure, giant signs, flashing lights, big speed signs, placed properly across those roads, I'm very sure that those same individuals will then see those posted limits and then continue the flow of traffic in that respect to speed limit. So those are some of the measures that we're going to bring in to make sure people slow down. And safety is always top of mind. Ontario ranks top 5 in North America for one of the safest jurisdictions when it comes to road safety. And we're going to continue to work on that and go from there. I also wanted to pass this over to Chief Nish and maybe make some comments on this as well.
Thank you, MP Grewal. I do want to highlight and thank MP Grewal and obviously our MPs and Associate Minister to being here. Because the reason I say that to you is because we look at these issues, whether it be auto theft, traffic safety, not just from one system's lens. We're trying to do it together. I think my regional councillors and councillors would agree that we try to work with the municipality, with the province, to find solutions to the problems we see the most. All of you know here in Brampton, the volume of vehicles on the road continues to increase, not just with the population growth, but you can go by anybody's house and see there are 2 or 3 cars. Some cars are parked sideways because they can't get off the driveway. The volume of traffic here is great. It is obviously a priority for us from a police perspective, is to make sure the roads are safe. Our main mechanism for doing that is enforcement. And the next mechanism is obviously education. But what we've been doing also in the last several years is working with municipal officials on road safety initiatives. We have a strategy that brings the region, both the cities, with us to work on our high traffic, most dangerous areas, most of the highest volume areas. So as it pertains to these speed cameras, I cannot have an officer, unfortunately, on every street corner, although I'd like to, because I think the presence would be welcome. And Deputy Andrews will speak to our efforts in enforcement this year. But we do believe wholeheartedly that the value of things like speed cameras, traffic calming measures, environmental conditions, speed limits, education, is all to change a driver's behavior. Any way we can do that, we're a very strong proponent of it. We do not believe it should be a revenue generating tool. I think all of the Ontario chiefs have made a statement saying that we don't believe that. How the cameras are administered is obviously what requires attention. We obviously understand the promises change to this legislation. We will have to continue to make our efforts to ensure traffic enforcement is focused and in the right places. I can assure you that our next conversation that I had with Mayor Brown this week about what does this change look like now once the legislation is in and the cameras are not operating, what is going to look different. So we will continue to work with our partners, but it's not one person's responsibility. We do believe that with the province, with the region and the city, will allow us to ensure that our enforcement efforts. So very quickly, because we know there's lots of issues, Deputy Andrews has an update, just briefly on the update of recent enforcement. If you can do that very quickly, which has changed for us because of the budget that Regional Council Tour has mentioned, we've been able to increase the traffic on road safety teams.
Thanks, Chief. Just to reassure everyone in here, the separate and apart from automatic speed enforcement cameras, Peel Regional Police is dedicated to roadway safety. And as the Chief said, the resourcing, hiring in the last 2 years, 2024 was 125 officers, has allowed us to focus on roadway safety. Throughout the stats for you here, we've identified high traffic areas. That's areas that are identified by you, the members of the public, as being priority areas. Our police officers have spent in excess of 5,000 hours this year in those zones, enforcing the rules, enforcing not just speeding, but dangerous driving, aggressive driving. We've made 8,400 charges, and that's a 78% increase over 2024. And that's a direct result of the resourcing that is coming from hiring additional officers and allowing us to be able to focus on roadway safety, which is a priority for our community.
So I just wanted to add that, because I know as a teacher, road safety was big. And at the city of Brampton, we were promoting Road Watch. And the Peel Regional Police did a really great job by compiling those streets that we've been talking about, all those sensitive areas through Road Watch data. And I want to encourage you all to go online with Peel Regional Police. If you see people driving carelessly, speeding through your community, you can make a non-emergency complaint through Road Watch, and the police will respond, and they compile that data and know which areas are of concern. And that's on the Peel Regional Police website. They could also access it through the City of Brampton website. I remember there was a time in Brampton Center, there was Williams Parkway, was always a speed trap on Willie's Park. Because you always know a couple will be sitting there ready to catch you. But we need to go back to that. And so I find when you have speed traps in areas where you know that there's an officer there, you will slow down. And so it's so refreshing to hear us get back to these measures as a way to reduce speed. Let the police take their tickets. Because if you're going fast enough, you might lose points. And that's the message we want to get back to. Your road safety is important. Your safety on the road is important. We all can play a part. So go to the city of Brampton, get the roadblocks website, do it through the police website as well, and report cars in areas and streets that you know people are speeding on. So that way, the police can do their job.
Just in closing to this, I also wanted to add, another question that I've received a lot from our residents is what's going to happen with these cameras that we now have installed across the city. The premier got forward this morning during his press conference was also engaging in conversation with the municipalities to repurpose the use of those cameras, whether we use that in our crime prevention tactics as plate meters, tie that into our systems database where we can identify stolen vehicles, other technological upgrades that we can do in partnership with our police departments and our municipalities. This is a conversation that we're still having to see if that's a possibility. Hopefully that the municipalities and progress in the police force are able to come into agreement on that. We can use that towards our crime fighting tactics as well. So we're also thinking about ways to repurpose these investments. Continuing to work with everyone to use these cameras to the best of our ability outside of that speed enforcement zone.
Can I, just wanted to,
The city's commission do also want to thank our dear Dr. Grewal. The city of Brampton is supportive of keeping the speed cameras. The province of Ontario is in the business of removing those speed cameras. So instead of like that, it's one of
so we are ultimately, you're right, creatures of the province, so the government does have the power to bring in ASC cameras and then also to remove them as well. And I think it's important to understand when we talk about this, the cameras weren't the only solution to reducing traffic and speed and keeping our communities safe. They were part of a bunch of strategies we're deploying at the city of Brampton, whether it comes from traffic calming measures, whether it comes from education, and speed bumps. I'm assuming everybody's been seeing speed bumps. I've been seeing speed bumps yet, but seeing on. So it was part of the solution of the strategies we were deploying in the city of Brampton. And we did have a report come to council on September 10th. And it wasn't based on politics or emotion, it was based on results. And we saw a 10% decrease in speeding where there were cameras. But ultimately, as you know, this decision has been made under the municipality. We adapt, and so we are looking to repurpose the cameras. I know the board has mentioned that, and police, Chief Fish, the team has been helping to do that. We are thrilled there's funding for traffic calming measures, especially when the cameras are removed. We'll have to deploy other strategies that are including speed bumps, including traffic calming measures. And so we're happy to hear that there will be funding and we'll be looking to access that funding. And ultimately, I think when it comes to all levels of government, we have the provincial government here, we have a partner for Peel Regional Police. We are all focused on doing something about speeding. We are focused on keeping our community safe. And especially the school safety zones as a former school trustee as well. We are focused on keeping our children safe as well. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We're going to move to the next topic so that we can cover all the concerns that the community has submitted to the staff. The next topic of concern is auto theft prevention. The question goes as follows. Residents are frustrated with vehicle thefts across Brampton, with many cars stolen straight from driveways in the middle of the night. Despite installing cameras and alarms, thieves continue to outsmart these systems. They want to know that auto thefts in the region have fallen by 16% in 2024 compared to 2023, and nearly half of stolen cars in 2025 have already been recovered. Despite that progress, over 300 vehicles are reported stolen in the last 30-day period across Mississauga and Brampton. Many residents still live in fear that they too will wake up and see their vehicle missing. What additional measures, whether enforcement, tech, community programs, or cross-jurisdictional partnerships are being scaled now to ensure that this decline continues and is sustained long-term in Brampton to stop all of that? We're going to begin with Director Minister CMB.
Thank you for that excellent question. So, the moderator is correct. We've seen a decline in recent years, 16% last year in Ontario, 25.9% so far this year across Ontario, largest decline than any other province in Canada. It's heavily behind Peel. In Peel, this year we've seen a 34% drop so far, 39% drop in Brampton. Now, to be fair, this drop is coming from a very high number. So while the numbers are coming down, the trend is in a good direction. It's coming from a very high number, so overall numbers are still quite high, much higher than we're comfortable with. Our government is a large number of things. I'll touch base on just a little bit of them, just a few of them, and then go into detail about the real root cause of the problem. So what happened with all of them, it used to be an occasional crime of opportunity. A teenager would steal a car for joyride, or somebody would steal a car to commit different crime. But over time, organized crime has moved in, especially since COVID. And we've noticed that now all of them itself, stolen vehicles themselves have become a commodity that the thieves want to target. But what's worse is that a profit from all of them now goes on to fund guns and gangs and drugs and human trafficking and all sorts of nasty things. So this isn't just a property crime. It funds sophisticated multinational criminal organizations, and we're actually very concerned about that. So one of the things we did is that we created major auto theft investigation response teams. And what they do is they dedicated prosecutors that rather than taking whatever case comes up, they focus themselves only on auto theft cases to make sure they build the strongest case possible in front of courts. We launched preventing auto theft grants that grants are good to use right here in Peel and across police services all across Ontario, and that allows police departments to create dedicated teams focused on auto theft. We also invested $51 million in OPP-led organized crime auto theft reporting team. Because not just auto theft, there are related crimes, small break-ins, towing, and other industries that criminals get into. We, last year's budget, we announced an investment of $134 million to fund 5 helicopters, including one by here in Peel, one for Halton as well, one for Toronto, New York. And this year, we added another $34 million $57 million to add 2 more helicopters for Niagara and other regions. So we partnered up with Carfax. So I can list a lot of things, but I'll tell you the root cause of all of this. Back in 2019, the federal government and the Trudeau government, they came up with a bill called C-75. And that bill really broke the criminal code. It did a number of things. One, it got rid of a lot of mandatory minimum punishments for most crimes. And I'll touch base on that in a second. And number 2, it changed the bail rules. So now the assumption is that if you're arrested for a crime, you must receive bail as soon as possible with minimum conditions. As soon as possible is almost always, few hours or next day. And minimum conditions generally means no condition at all. And that's a serious problem. Now, the Bill C-75 also does not require judges to look at prior bail violations. So in theory, there's a ladder system where every time you commit an offense, and if you violate your bail condition and you allow time to arrest, you get slightly higher condition, and you still get bail, but you get bail under more restrictions as you go up the ladder. But in practice, number 1, because the law doesn't require judges to look at prior bail conditions, the people who go before judges 4, 5, 6, 7 times, and they get bail as if they've committed the first time. And what makes it worse is that because these hearings happen really quickly, I've talked to police departments where they haven't completely finished writing reports and that person was already out of bail. And so the trial attorney who goes to argue for judges
has absolutely no time or information. There are times where, and I've heard that from criminal attorneys myself, where bail hearing happens, and then they finally get the more detail about what the person did. By the time they then read the report, the hearing is done and the person's out. So there's something fundamentally broken in our criminal system. And criminal justice system in Canada, criminal code is federal. So provinces can fund the courts, which we do. We fund police services, and municipal governments fund police services, but the actual law is federal. And because it's federal, we can only ask the federal government. So that account, it's not just our government, by the way. All 13 premiers in our country, all 13, including NDP premiers in Manitoba and British Columbia, including Liberal premiers in Newfoundland, Labrador, and Yukon, including independent premiers in other two territories, and obviously conservative premiers. All 13 premiers have been united for years and have written multiple letters to the federal government asking them to give us meaningful bail reform and strengthen the criminal code. Myself, with Solicitor General, Attorney General, and Associate Attorney General on Friday issued another letter to the federal government asking for 11 specific changes. The Police Association of Ontario have written a similar letter asking for 7 specific changes. The Canadian Police Association has asked for that. Ontario Association of Police Chiefs has asked for that. So every major police association, every province, regardless of party, is asking the federal government to strengthen the criminal code and fix the bail system. But unfortunately, until they do that, and I'll give you a couple examples real quick because I don't want to get ahead of myself with a lot of other questions. But they were out of 99 convictions that happened in my riding of Milton. So 99 out of them. They were 99 people who were arrested for auto theft. They were tried in court. They were convicted as guilty, and they were given out commissions. Okay? Out of 99, a vast majority, not just a small majority, a big majority received 0 jail time or 1 day in jail. So if you're a criminal and you're making a lot of money committing crime, you're thinking it's worth it. Because even if I get arrested, I'll get a slap on the wrist, I'll be out the next day, I'll commit more crime, I'll get arrested, I'll be out the next day. And eventually, when I get the sentence, it will be not that serious. And that's what's happening. I spoke with Durham police that spent a lot of time and energy building a case against this gang from Quebec that was coming to Ontario, coming out of theft and whatnot. And they finally got conviction for 2 people, and both of these people got 0 jail time and just 18 months of probation. That's it. So one of the problems we're facing, the provinces are facing, is that we're making a lot of investment. The police services are making a lot of investment. Police board has funded police budgets now. Everyone's working really, really hard. And you've heard that the police is becoming half of stolen vehicles. I don't know how to do that. That's amazing. But until the criminals get the right level of punishment, it's very hard to control because it doesn't reduce them. It doesn't take criminals and put them behind bars where they belong. It releases them back to the community coming more fun. And so we have to work closely on it. Let me give you one example. Our government invested $112 million to strengthen the bail system just to keep an eye on high-risk offenders that have been released to the community to make sure they don't re-offend. That money should have been invested in more worthy causes because these individuals who are high risk of public safety should have been kept in our laws. So all of that, yes, we've seen a lot of success because the investment being made, but more importantly, because the hard work of police services have done. But in order to continue the trend down and really solve the problem, we need to strengthen the criminal code and fix the bail system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. David. We can go to the next question. We do have 3 minutes.
And there's
Okay, Councilor Ron.
Chief
We just wanted to, this community has been the largest affected by auto theft anywhere in this country. Mr. Lee's comments. 2 years ago, we had the highest rate per capita, and I think everybody in this group has been affected by it. But I do want to tell you, we are at the core of why we're seeing shifts in reduction of auto theft nationally. Thankfully, with the advocacy that we've seen and the investments at the provincial level, but what we've done is we've led the discussion, and I think our Brampton councilors will know this. We hosted the first national auto theft summit here, and And we didn't bring just every level of government. We brought water manufacturers, insurance companies, border. Let's be honest, it's being exploited because the vehicles can leave the country very easily. There is a responsibility right across the country for this, and we have been, unfortunately in a situation where we were forced to lead it, but we did. And so I'm going to invite Deputy Chief Millennish to tell you a little bit about what has changed, because it is hopeful what's happened. Has it been resolved? No, but thank you.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to provide some context. So, you heard the reference, this year we're down now, that's approximately 40%. Down 40% over a year, and we're down 16%. So I think what that provides you is really two frames to consider. One, we are making progress. But when I tell you that our reduction this year alone represents a reduction of $119 million, I think also provides you some context with the amount of work that has to be done. So it's a big issue that we continue to invest in a way to expect to research. We've more than doubled our budget. I've sent officers to the Port of Montreal to do interventions and recover hundreds and hundreds of cars along the CSA. I personally have gone to ports internationally to see how they protect their borders and how they prevent stolen cars from leaving their countries. I actually was joined by Mayor Patrick Brown, and we went to one of the busiest ports in North America, Port of Vancouver, and asked those questions. And we continue to advocate because there's two basic elements that need to be considered in any community safety crisis. The first is, of course, from a policing perspective. What can we do from an enforcement angle, from partnerships? What you would expect from the police service? And we're arresting and charging more people than we ever have. We're going to continue to do that. But as we heard, there's some limits. If we're arresting and charging people over and over again, and it's not working, then what we need to do is identify why is that happening and what are the gaps. And that's something that I, can stand here incredibly confident and tell you, I believe this service does that as well, if not better than any other police service. We advocate on their behalf. The chief mentioned we had the first office. We had a second one where we brought manufacturing, we brought big car companies and asked them the tough questions that we were hearing from you. We spoke to insurance companies and asked them some of the same questions that you're asking yourself now. But what we also did was take some momentum. After a second auto fest, I watched your chief federally ask the Prime Minister and share some of the concerns on your behalf with the Prime Minister about the changes that could be made. As you've heard, we shared those issues with our provincial partners, and they didn't wait as supporting us and being responsible. But there's still work that has to be done in order to turn down auto. It's very simple. Any business person will understand it. It's a lucrative market, so it's high reward, low risk. And so when we're working at addressing changes, flipping that equation on its head, and higher risk and lower reward. And that's what we've been doing over the last couple of years. That's resulted in tens and tens of millions of dollars of cars not being taken from our communities. But again, I want to make sure you recognize that was not done. But we are going to do everything we can as your police service to address that and keep these people from coming into their communities and shopping for vehicles if they want to export outside of our community. We're protecting, and we're going to continue that work.
Thank you to the three regional police for your efforts. We are running short on time, so we have about a minute and a half. Rob Powell.
I just, real quick, and, Mayor Brown has said it over and over again. The regional police need is best police force in the country. They have the most collaborative that we have in the country. At any given time, we call it Chief Fish, Deputy Chief Andrews, Deputy Chief Milovich. Well, maybe not Milovich. He doesn't answer my calls too much. But the city is also, we're tasked with community safety and we believe in community safety. We've made investments in high resolution cameras at 50 intersections throughout the city. These cameras, they're not known to the general public, but they are known to the police. And the police can then use those cameras through your ring cameras at home and track vehicles or track people committing crimes right across the city and it's all the way through. But the one thing that at a municipal level, we get the fortunate ability to do is work with all levels of government. And even though the Peel Regional Police have done an amazing job bringing down some of the stolen vehicles that we see across the city, we also have our federal government who has given us the scanners at Intermodal Hub here in Brampton. The Intermodal Hub here in Brampton is the largest rail hub across the country. So, and I think it's worth noting that, all levels of government work together and the city of Brampton is committed to making sure that we're safe with those cameras as well.
Thank you, Councilor Powell. So the next question is about home and business break-ins, and my colleague will be taking this.
The next question is as follows. Several Brampton neighborhoods have recently reported home and business break-ins, with thieves often targeting small family-owned stores and leaving homeownership. Families in Brampton have been traumatized by violent robberies in their own homes and businesses. In one case, suspects forced their way into a home near Mississauga Road and Queen Street, assaulted the family inside, and even ran over one of the victims of the vehicle. In another, jewelry store owners were targeted in broad daylight, leaving staff and customers terrified. These are not just statistics, they are our neighbors, parents, and children living in fear in what should be the safest spaces, their homes and workplaces. These crimes make people feel unsafe, even inside their own properties. What concrete actions are being taken today to prevent these kinds of violent home invasions and armed robberies? And how will the government and police show families that Brampton is no longer an easy target for these crimes? In addition to this, people ask, if someone forces their way into your home, what are you legally allowed to do to protect yourself and your family? Can you clarify what protections the law gives to homeowners?
This is directed to anybody on the panel. So we're going to respond to the candidates. Anyone else want to answer this question?
Okay, we're going to sort of share the response to this question. The responsibility is to share the regulations to shops and homes that are responding to all of our regulations and bargains and responding to our frontline officers. And the home invasions, well, they're responded by, commissioned by frontline officers. Next teams take on the investigation of those violent robberies. But from the regulator perspective, there are a number of things that we're doing to help address the issues. Though there are pieces of the issue that are beyond the control of the police, when we talk about bail, etc. But in terms of the police response, what we have identified is that similar to auto theft, regulators are now becoming a very lucrative, low risk, high reward area for organized crime. We find organized groups that are targeting residential homes and businesses. And coming into our communities from outside our communities, sometimes outside the country, it's targeting our communities, committing these acts, and then exporting the goods and returning to their communities as residents. So we want to better respond to this organized type of crime. We have instituted what we call dedicated break-in units, again as a result of the resourcing that comes from the region resources, first, the front lines. We've been able to build out great engineers that are dedicated to fighting these organized groups that are attacking our communities. And we've also, are in the process of building out a major crime team. Major crime team is focused on disrupting those organized crime groups that are attacking our community, that are from outside of our community, and in some cases, transnational, international scope.
Thank you, Mark. And I think it's important to provide some distinction. So when we're talking about violent regulators for a home, that's a home thing. And a robbery of a business, again, is anytime anybody enters a business, demands something with threats and violence. That's when, as Mark mentioned, it generally falls to our commercial robbery. And so the question was very simple. What are you doing in that space? So this year, we've added an entire new investigative team for commercial robbery bureau. We're participating in a variety of provincial joint task forces, and we're seeing results. Some of you may have heard of results of Project Nitrate, Project Midnight. These were all organized crime networks that were operating in the field, doing home invasions, doing carjackings. And so again, I think back to what I said earlier. It starts with policing has to do what they're doing in the field while enforcement. And if we're doing that, we're not seeing the results of it, then we need to ask ourselves why, look for the gaps, and force the people who can fill those gaps to do that. I mentioned, I also think it's important to talk some context. So this year in 2025 alone, the percentage decrease of carjackings is 22%. The percentage decrease of home invasions is 38%, almost 40%. And jewelry store robberies are down by 27%. Now, I want to offer the caveat of that's over last year, when we saw record numbers we hadn't seen it. We hadn't seen before. So there's still more work to be done. There are gaps that exist in the system, and we need to fill those. Last week, we actually had a victim survivor symposium where we brought some of the people that had experiences like we're just looking at. I was joined by many of the colleagues on the panel here, and we identified where we could be better. We heard from an individual who was at his stand at 1 o'clock in the morning with his family and experienced a home invasion and his experience in the system. And you know what? We identified many of the same issues. We need to continue to work on the bail system. There needs to be another review of legislative reform, and then we need to support survivors who go through these things. That combined with strong police enforcement, making sure people are accountable, is really what's going to make our community safer and these experiences less frequent.
I'll just finish with the comment. The last part of the question was, what can residents do in their own home and what is lawful? So, we are different than the US. We do not have a legislative capacity as the US for homeowners. There is legislation in place that does permit homeowners to defend themselves to a certain extent. Our position at Peel Police is we're advocates of strengthening people's ability to defend themselves. We've done that. Well, Deputy Monash, myself, Mayor Brown, and I were in Ottawa 2 weeks ago. We have proposed to the federal government to institute new federal offenses that are specific to home invasions. 10, 15 years ago, it did not exist, but the laws are 20 or 30 years old. And so things need to shift in what we're experiencing. We have suggested reverse illness, and Associate Mr. Eagle will speak to this too. But legal offenses that have certain penalties, the bail system is obviously a key component of that. But we are advocates for things shifting in the Canadian context. It has to shift given our environment. And that is my position. And I think it aligns obviously very practically with where the province is also.
Yeah, so I'll keep it short. I'll leave a couple of things, right? As Chief mentioned earlier in this question, that Right now, criminal crime is high reward and low risk. We have to flip that, where it's low risk and high reward. So how do we do that? One, we have to make sure that law protects victims and not criminals. Because right now, our criminal law, the way it's implemented and written, it protects the criminals and penalizes victims. So the letter I talked about that we issued to the federal government on Friday, the number of asks that I want to talk about. Number one, for extreme crime, let's say murder, sexual crimes, human trafficking, home invasion, it should be mandatory minimum sentence. So we can go to criminals and say, look, if you break into somebody's house, we will catch you and you will go away for 10 years. Not 3 months, but 10 years. That's a very important one, and it used to happen. That's 2019, and yeah. The other thing is, Chief also mentioned reverse notice. Let me tell you what that is. I mentioned DLC 75 requires judges to release people on bail as soon as possible, which is immediately with minimal conditions. The opposite of that is rather than asking the crowd, why should I not release this person? They will ask the person, you're going to affect public safety, you're going to stay on the street and mislead the judge, they do not no longer affect public safety. So we want reverse notice for routine violent offenders, but also for some serious violent. And the most disturbing evidence is the last one. It was a case of Brampton where 5 people kidnapped a woman. I guess. I wait maybe some of the correspondence. So 5 people kidnapped a woman. Then they went to her house, robbed her house. Then they went to a different house, shot the homeowner. They were in the process of robbing the house and police came in. Okay, cut for it. The charges are against 2 people. One person, the dealer was already out of bail, so violation of the definition. Kidnapping, attempted murder, and home invasion. I read this news 2 days later, they're already out of bail. So when we talk about home invasion, we really need to become strict with crime and we need to have law and order in this country that says, look, if you break the law, there will be consequences. The last question was, what are homeowners' rights? And the premier agreement that 4 is very, very clear. As far as he's concerned, if I break into your house, you have the right to defend yourself, you do whatever is necessary, and you should have the substantive nuisance.
Thank you, Minister. CME.
One last thing, another, we have to ask ourselves. So we also ask the federal government to have additional protection for homeowners in the situation if I'm into your house. There should be additional protection in law. So you're not held to you're not held to a high standard, but you have to prove yourself that you use a proportional response. Instead, it's my fault for breaking into your home and whatever you do to me, I deserve.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for explaining the double form media and the reverse notice and the provision of police chiefs. Now we're going to move on to the next question, which is reducing gun violence, and my colleague will be asking the question.
The question is as follows. Recent shootings in Brampton, including incidents linked to organized crime and extortion, have left families deeply worried about their safety. Residents are asking what's being done to stop guns from flowing into our community. What steps are being taken to get illegal firearms off the street and dismantle the criminal networks responsible for bringing them here? There will be another follow-up question on extortion. Please hold comments for the next question.
This question is directed to all panelists, and you have 10 minutes.
Excellent. So specifically gun violence and the increase in shootings we've seen. We've done a number of things in response to that. You know, we created an extortion investigative task force. We reinvigorated our strategic tactical enforcement. And, you know, again, over the course of the last month and a half, we announced some of the results of the large project that we've done called Project Outsource, where well over 100 charges were laid against a group that was was targeting our community involved in home violence and extortions. In total, our extortion task force has laid well over 200 charges, charging multiple people who were using extortion to bring fear into our community and try to benefit themselves. So, from an enforcement perspective, we are absolutely responsible in terms of resourcing, but we're continuing to push to get those illegal firearms off the street. 90% of the illegal firearms that we recover that are used in crimes are imported illegally from the U.S. The remaining 10% are firearms that we can't trace. So what I can tell you is the overwhelming majority of firearms that are used in crimes are clearly coming from the U.S. And my original point was some of the actions and having conversations with our partners about what they can do to make our community safe when we can't direct it or when we can't create a team to respond to it. We're doing that. We're having the tough conversations and lobbying for other agencies to really look at what we do so that our community is safer and these aren't as big as big issue in our community as they currently are. But I think it may be difficult not to, when we talk about that violence here, the majority of what we saw in terms of shootings was happening in relation to extortions. And I think we're going to talk about that next, but again, look forward to the conversation there. Every weekend, our folks are out on the street, arresting people and seizing illegal firearms out of the hands of really bad people. I think this past 4 days, we've been covering 5. And we're going to continue to do that, but also require some change so that's all.
Thanks for that, Chief. I just wanted to add some context to the extortion aspects of the Deputy Superintendent's answer. In the past year, Brampton business owners from trucking companies to convenience stores have come forward to say they've been threatened with extortion, with some even facing arson or violence if they refuse to pay. Many are afraid to speak up for fear of retaliation. What protections and supports are available today for businesses to report safely, and what targeted enforcement is being carried out to protect business owners? In addition, now that Canada has officially designated the Ishmael Gang as a terrorist organization, what does this mean in practice? Specifically, what additional power does this give the police and law enforcement agencies? Does this designation mean every shooting or violent act linked to this particular gang will now be treated as a terrorist attack?
I'll jump in there again. So our police service was the first in the country to recognize extortions the way we've experienced them before any other police service. We were also the ones that drew in some of our federal policing partners into that conversation. We've laid hundreds of criminal charges in relation to extortion. We all had to speak. We had, I believe it was almost 30 investigators that were specially trained and devoted to taking these taking these reports from our community and investigating. We have invested millions and millions of dollars to make sure that there was a heavy police response and we were saying to the organized criminal networks that were targeting our community, that is not acceptable. You referenced the developments today in relation to the designation of the word Fishman Group. Again, I believe we're one of the first police services to really listen to our community and on behalf of them, share the concerns of our community. And I believe we contributed to those conversations. We had, and I look at some of our Brampton councilors, my colleagues here, we've had town halls where we discussed this very thing. And this is why, it's never always just a police response. What you see here is a collection of people that represent you, that are willing to identify opportunities to address the issues that we're talking about today, so that you don't have to worry about it. You really need to understand we're absolutely here and devoted to doing that. Maybe I'll pass it.
Thank you for starting us off with that description of the work that Peel Police has been doing. You're absolutely right. That Peel Police was the first in the entire country, call it what it is, extortion. They could call it what it is with traditional gang to be listed as a terrorist organization. I remember in December 2023, that we were saying at Council Power, we were all on the phone, we were talking about all the calls we're getting from our local business leaders about the calls and threats that they're facing. We get on the phone with Mayor Brown, we get the chief on the phone at the same time, and he said, let's get into room as soon as possible. In December, that winter, I remember all of us, including MP Grewal and our provincial members of parliament and our federal members of parliament, all sat in a room together, talked to the police force, they gave us an update about what the situation is, what's going on. They quickly assembled one of the best task forces specifically for extortions. Had a number that anybody could call without any fear, rebutter public messages out, asking people to come forward, to call the police with any information they have, to not be scared, to not pay anybody any money, and that went on. We later, Mayor Brown and I joined both chiefs in Ottawa when we met with the Minister of Public Safety, and one of our asks, the first one was to make sure that we can list traditional gang as a terrorist organization. I know today, finally, that news has come to light, but we're one of the communities that faces the impact of these firsthand. We're always the first ones in the country that has to face the impact of the consequences of this. But it's our responsibility to make sure that we listen to you. We're also the first ones to advocate for those changes. So, kudos to the police team that went to Ottawa, talked to the ministers directly, gave our set of recommendations, and got us to this point.
And then the second part of that question, the question was, well, what does this destination do? And I have to say, definitely very, very welcome on behalf of our police service. It's a welcome change in destination from the federal government because it changes the landscape of the offenses that we're experiencing and investigating here. Previously, an extortion happened, somebody references that name, and they may get charged with extortion. What will happen now is, of course, they'll still get charged and arrested for the extortion, but it becomes a terror offense. So now we share that with our CMP. There's a federal decision made about whether or not to proceed with terror offenses. So additional sentencing, additional authorities for police to restrain assets, properties, finances, and really get at the heart of why these uses are being, or why these offenses are occurring in our communities. It changes the ecosystem of that offense for us. So we're very happy to see it.
So I quickly add, thank you to the regional police and our Brampton City Councilor, Mayor Brown as well, for being one of the first in Canada to recognize this issue, bring it forward to the federal government. This is where the federal government also deserves involved, regardless of what it's like. We're actually designating the Detroit gang as a terrorist organization to further protect Canadian citizens across this country. There's a lot of work that we have to do in terms of build reform, a lot of assets that we have to do regional police bring here for our team to make sure that we bring the rest of the things up to parts like this so we can further protect Canadians and Ontarians. We can move to the next slide.
Thank you, MP Grewal and the chief, as well as Councilor Tour, on providing context on the extortion and business safety. Next question is also to Councilor Tour. This is about 911 response times. Brampton residents have raised concerns about long waits when calling 911, with some saying help has taken too long to arrive in emergencies. What actions are being taken to improve 911 response times in the field? And how will investments in staffing, technology, or coordination ensure that residents get help when they need it most?
Thank you, Sean. I was just sliding the chair, but I was sorry to leave the room and I needed to be home, but I will definitely answer this question. I remember when I was going on, this was one of the concerns that was brought forward is how long you have to wait on the phone before you can get help on an emergency basis. I've had firsthand experience of being on the phone for more than 2 minutes. There were instances where people were waiting on the phone for about 10 minutes before speaking with anybody. Every single second matters when you're in an emergency situation. So what we have done is we've implemented the new generation 911 technology. Maybe the deputy chief will speak more about that technology, but what it's allowed us to do is significantly drop that response time. The national standard in policing for that response time is 14 seconds. We're well beyond that. I think we're at 12 seconds. We're probably even better right now. if anybody recently, I think during this year has had an emergency situation, has called 911, within 10 seconds, you had your phone answered, and I think that's a big improvement from an average wait time of 2.5 minutes to under 14 seconds. And that is only possible. I know we get this question asked a lot, why our property taxes have gone up, and every single time I tell the residents honestly about how much investment we're also making. Part of our city investments are invested in our police services. The new 911 operations center, if you drive by on the Saga Road, you see the building coming up right now. That's giving them the ability to hire more 911 operators, more people that can be on the phones. But in today's day and age, when you have smart technology, when you have access to excellent technology, gone are those days when you call 911 and you have to wait on the phone for minutes. I hope we can keep improving on those timelines, but maybe if you want to expand on what the new generation 911 actually means, it is really great so glad and for police. So maybe you want to answer that, and I will say if I need to get home, but thank you for having me.
Thank you, Councilor Tuer, and I do want to thank our regional council and our Brampton councils here for supporting our asks. Here in the Hill region, we have one of the busiest 911 centers in North America. Every day there are 2,000 911 calls that come into the field. And if you can imagine, 2,000 just over the course of one day means that many people are calling. Do you know, a lot of people call by accident, by the phone, there's hang-ups. What the new technology allowed us to do was use AI, artificial intelligence, to scan the calls and determine which ones were real or accident. It also calls back people right away to say, is your emergency real or was this an accident? But that was one component. The other thing we have done and we're heading for is hire almost 30 new 911 communicators, which has now got us to the point, as Councilor Tuer said, at one point, on average, people will wait 2.5 minutes, sometimes up to 6 to 8 minutes in the last 2 years. Now we're down to less than maybe 8 seconds. Can you imagine being in the worst moment of your life and having to wait for somebody to answer? None of us should be doing that. And so the investments are real, and they allow us to get our officers up there quicker. We are one of the lowest staff police services for a large city in North America. And one of the efforts was to get us back to our growth. You know, if you live in Brampton, how much we're growing. And as Hardeep Grewal said, cost of living, the economy, and safety are one of the top 3 issues. Our job is to make sure we see the changes. And our response times is one of the biggest successes we've seen in North America. We have other major cities coming to see what's happened. So we're pleased to report back to you. And I want to thank you for bringing it to our attention. And thank you for your support. Resources actually make a difference and we're saving lives.
Thank you, Chief Mitch. Another round of applause for Councilor Tuer for being on the panel today. Response times are very important for the community to feel safe. And that brings us to our next question, which is police presence in neighborhoods. Many residents say they want to see more police officers in their neighborhoods. What concrete steps are being taken to increase physical patrols, build stronger relationships with communities, and ensure faster response times across Brampton? This one's directed to Mark Andrews, Deputy Chief.
Thank you for the question, Sean. Police presence in neighborhoods, it's an issue that we've heard a great deal about from our community. And the elected official, we want to thank them for bringing it to our attention as well. As a result of what we've heard and in response to our community, we assigned 50 officers in Brampton over the last year to dedicate to what we call community incident response teams. These teams are dedicated not to answering the 911 calls, so it's not they're available for that purpose if needed, but they're dedicated to responding, to being present and responsive to identify problems in your community. When when I talked about a little earlier about being responsive to high traffic event zones, that's for our traffic people. Our CERT teams, the teams that are made up of dedicated officers, men and women, who their sole priority is responding to whatever the community indicates the problem. I know the deputy mayor has been very familiar, very instrumental, so is Councillor Power, in bringing the issue to our attention. And because of that, and because of the resources that was allowed over the last 2 years, and hopefully going into this next budget cycle, we've been able to build those teams out. And that presence, and that responsiveness has been reflected in the incredible work, the number of charges, the number of firearms that have been seized by our CERT teams. I think the number is up to around 20 across the region in this last year. So we heard the message, the police presence was critical and of very high importance to our community, and as a result, we dedicated these 50 officers to responding to needs in Brampton.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. The next question is also to the Deputy Chief, which is youth crime prevention. We've heard growing concern that young people in Peel are being recruited into gangs and organized violence at rings, putting their futures at risk and contributing to rising crime. Parents want to know that their kids have safe and positive alternatives. What investments in sports, mentorship, and after-school programs are being expanded in Brampton to keep youth engaged and help them choose positive pathways instead of crime? This is also going to be a 5-minute allotted question.
So I'm gonna start with this one and give Deputy Chief a little bit of a break. I've had the opportunity to work in our schools as a school board trustee as well. This is an important issue to me, making sure our youth are on the right track. And I've only seen 3 things that actually are effective in making meaningful change in our young people's lives. And one is obviously having a strong foundation in faith and religion, and so we're not here to talk about that, but that's one important aspect. The other 2 are keeping kids busy with arts, and whether it's music, whether it's painting, or whether it's sports. Keeping them engaged in activities. I have the opportunity to introduce cricket into the school board. I have the opportunity to introduce kabaddi. Not because I like those sports or I'm a fan of them, but more to keep our young people engaged and to keep our young people busy. And they were extremely, extremely effective. The third thing that's effective is something we can all do sitting up here, or you could do sitting there, is mentorship. The impact I've seen, the largest impact I've seen on our young people is having individuals take 2 or 3 children, whether in high school, teens, young adults, and mentoring them, listening to them, providing them guidance, providing them wisdom. When you spend time and listen and hear what the concerns are and use your experience and your learnings in life to provide guidance, that is one of the most effective things you can do. And so I always encourage, especially the younger successful business people or the younger successful community activists or the younger successful politicians, to make sure along the way you're mentoring the next generation, because ultimately they're going to look at you as a role model, whether you want to be one or not. You are a role model, and it's important that you provide the guidance to uplift those in the community that you serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to top up on the things that the Deputy said. We have at Peel Police, we have a variety of initiatives that are focused on off-ramping youth from the issues that will take them to criminal lifestyles. Part of that is our youth strategy, which is a fulsome strategy developed with community partners. Deputy Pan is not here, and leads our state deputy unit, which is responsible for developing and implementing that strategy. In addition, the chief is leading the charge, but we have just brought out a foundation that will be raising funds, not for field police, not to buy, new helicopter or more vehicles, but to strengthen initiatives, youth initiatives in our community that will pour hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, into our community for youth initiatives. We also have our Pro Action Cops and Kids initiative, which is a long-standing, extremely successful initiative that is across Ontario, across southern Ontario, and is expanding. We've raised a tremendous amount of funds. I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but we're also, as an organization, we have the giving program, which was presented to the board, presented on that board last week, where each year we have 35 students who are brought into the field for a period of 8 weeks, and they're demonstrating they're given the opportunity to connect with police officers in the workplace and to build pathways to post-secondary education, which is again a really tremendous successful program. And there's a multitude more. We have partnerships with organizations like Keep Six, which is run by Richard Miller and his staff, and is partnered with the city of Brampton and the city of Mississauga, and the Free for All Foundation, which is again led by David Green, who's a trustee and who's a resident here in Brampton. And there's a list I can go through, but all these initiatives are focused on one thing: giving youth alternatives to the pressures that they face from social media and a number of other pressures that guide them off the track and into a life that is less than positive. We're trying to bring all these initiatives under a full city youth strategy that's going to impact our community now and in the future.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Our last question here is about collaboration across government and police. Residents often ask why it feels like police, the city, work in silos instead of coordinating efforts. With Brampton facing rising auto theft, gun violence, and extortion, people want to see unity and results rather than fragmented efforts. How are Peel Police, City of Brampton, and the Ontario government working together more effectively? And what outcomes do residents expect to see from these partnerships in the near future?
Well, I'll just start. One of the things that we all do really push is for collaboration. We meet yearly with municipalities at something called our AMO, Association of Municipalities Ontario. That's an opportunity for the region, the city to communicate with ministers across government to express the concerns that they're having and to help us understand how we can support. When it comes to policing and community safety, collaboration is key. I'm coming from the women's focused perspective. We encourage that we've seen really great collaborative efforts being done by community organizations and our Peel Regional Police, working hand in hand. Peel is the city that actually had the pilot to have a social worker go on ride-alongs to respond to incident partner violence calls and mental health calls happening in Peel. That's a collaboration that is necessary for us to really make sure people who are in need are getting the supports in the right places. And so collaboration is key, and I have to commend Chief Nish and the whole team for really pushing that work as well. We have really great people in the region of Peel and the city that are seeing which organizations will come together and work well. Even hosting organizations and the Peel Regional Police in the same building. Peel, we have a safe center, we're going to be opening a second one where the Peel Regional Police are housed inside the W.G. Davis Center and are able to provide women an opportunity to disclose and report abuse in a space that feels more safe, and it's not in a police department. And we're also seeing victim services housed in the Peel Regional Police building on Dairy. So these are really important collaborations that are helping to ensure those who are most vulnerable are able to get the support that they need, but also to ensure that communication is happening and communities are staying safer. On that side.
And just to find out, keep it really short, Ontario government, we work very, very closely with police services. We work closely with not just field police, but police services across Ontario. I'll mention a couple of things real quick. We announced funding for the CCTV cameras. We're funding CCTV cameras in many municipalities. It used to cost us $16,000 or $17,000 to pay to go to police academy and become a police officer. We made it free. So now family is saving $16,000 or $17,000, and young people in our family want to go and become police officers. We increased recruitment. So last year we took it up to 2,080 officers. We added one-time 300 intake. And just last week, we announced another 121 officers started the building training. We're investing $1 billion building a new police academy in Alberta as well as the one really for OPP. So we're making a lot of investments in areas. We're working very closely with all levels of government, and to give police services credit, every single police service I know in Ontario, OPP and municipal police service as well as first section police service. We work very, very closely, not just with the government, but federal government, but also other police services as well. And the last thing I mentioned is that we developed the bill compliance action, technically developed by Toronto, Durham, and then the OPP. And it's going to be deployed for 20 police services. It's going to be deployed all across Ontario this year, which means that every single police service will be able to connect with each other and see data on people who are out of bail. So if somebody commits a crime in Niagara and they get arrested by Niagara police, but they live in Brampton, Peel police will know about it. Peel police will know where they live. Peel police will know what the conditions are, and they'll be able to go enforce conditions.
Thank you. Just to concur with the ministers, for me, Deputy Andrews has over 30 years of policing. I'm at my 30th year this year, and I can tell you, in my entire time, I have not seen provincial government so focused on public safety and community safety. If you just listen to the Premier, you will know that yourself. And it's echoed in the comments that the ministers have made. So I do want to say, to answer the question, there is strong relationship and coordination insofar as they are responsive to our needs. We're constantly consulted by the Ministry of the Solicitor General. Our needs, our local MPPs. When we provide them a brief document, we send it to all of them. We have gotten better. And yes, historically, I would say maybe 30 years, 20 years, 50 years ago, there were some silos, but I can tell you now that this is probably I've never seen it to this extent, where the issues are discussed. If the solutions aren't necessarily in the province's hands, they are very strong to come alongside of us to advocate federally or to other entities as well. I must say also, because policing and public safety is not just the police's responsibility, they're very strong in supporting us in our partnerships with other agencies. Mr. Williams mentioned that with not-for-profit agencies, community agencies, health, education. So we know that these problems that affect the communities aren't one responsibility of one system. Everybody needs to be coordinated, and so the focus is on that and the community safety well-being standpoint. So I would say you're seeing the outcomes of that, and this is one example of it that's happening right now.
Thank you very much, Chief. We'll get to your issue just a minute. We'll just finish this up. Thank you very much, Chief, Deputy Mayor here today. Councilor Dr. Rod Power, CDME, that's our Associate Solicitor General, Jermaine Williams, Education Development Center, the Associate Minister of Social and Economic Opportunity, for all all being here. Thank you all for all being here today to engage this important discussion on public safety. Today's meeting really highlighted a lot of the work that we've been doing on the municipal and provincial level to ensure that our field police officers are supported by our government. But collectively, this was a conversation to relay all of the good things that we've been doing in the background to make sure that Bramptonians, Ontarians continue to stay safe. However, the work doesn't stop here. We've been hearing a lot of good news coming out of the federal government, like we heard today with the Fishman Gang, the Grewal terrorist organization. We're also working on these bill reform changes of which we've been advocating to make sure that we have strong laws coming in to Canada to make sure that we protect our people in that regard. So we're looking forward to what the federal government has to offer at this fall sitting. So new legislation, we're pushing them hard to make sure they're doing mandatory minimum sentencing, make the changes necessary for bill reform, and we look forward to what they have to see on that. This is the first time in Brampton East that we're having this type of a discussion, and I want to thank Chief Nish, Deputy Chief Melinda, and Deputy Andrews for making the time to connect with the community, to have this conversation. This is what inclusive policing is all about. The Chief takes time to connect with the residents to ensure that they know what's going on. So thank you all, our panelists, for coming out here today. Thank you all.